Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of History Now the Future, where we talk to interesting people about some of the most pressing issues of today, using history as our guide and the future as our destination. My name is Corey Bradford. You may know me as This Is Corey from social media. And today we're also going to be talking to someone who's gotten pretty popular on social media, but she's actually been a very popular singer, songwriter in the jazz and soul and gospel genres for more than a decade now. But more recently, she has become famous for her critical breakdowns on social media regarding different issues in the entertainment industry. And I'm very interested to talk to her about some of the disruptions going on in the entertainment industry today, both in the music industry as well as it pertains to movies and TV shows. Welcome to the show today, Dara Starr Tucker. Dara, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, Corey. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
I recently saw you interviewing people on the red carpet. What was that project for?
That was the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, their annual gala. So they invited me to be the red carpet host. So the Legal Defense Fund is kind of the political action wing of the NAACP, and they've been around forever. A lot of people don't know a lot about them, but they were the ones who were behind the Brown versus Board of Education decision, and they have been the ones fighting people like Edward Bloom, who have been who took down affirmative action, and they're at the forefront of a lot of these kind of civil rights fights that end up getting up to the Supreme Court. So yeah, it's an organization of lawyers, really.
Interesting. And what was that red carpet event? Was it just like, were they raising money for their cause?
Yeah, it was definitely a fundraiser, kind of a gala. It was probably, I don't know, 700 people there. They were honoring Spike Lee and his wife. They were honoring, it was hosted by, what's his name? Wendell Pierce.
Yeah.
A lot of luminaries that were there. So it was cool just to kind of observe and be around. I got to talk to, oh goodness, Alfre Woodard, who's a fellow Tulsan. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got to talk to her, got to talk to a few other politicians and singers. John Batiste, got to talk to him, and Alex, what is his name? I can't remember the other guy. Anyway, a few musicians, singers. The granddaughter of Thurgood Marshall, who's a very well known lawyer who started the Legal Defense Fund. So yeah, it's
That
cool.
that that looks like it looked like a really cool event, and
Yeah.
I was excited to see you on a red carpet like that because it's like you're getting just like so much further and further into this popularity that you've really
Oh,
gotten.
not really.
Well, it seems like it. It seems like you are. Um, that's a very interesting question too because I know that you've become big on social media for a lot of your videos. You do they're kind of like these mini documentaries on
Mhm.
social media about the entertainment industry, but you've been working as a singer-songwriter for well over a decade now. How
Mhm.
is that different? How is it different doing this social media work compared to your background in music?
Well, it's a lot more, there's a lot more instant gratification, I will say, and I think that's part of the that immediate, it's that dopamine hit where you put something out and you're just waiting to see how it performs. Whereas with music, we're getting ready to do another album project. We just got through talking to my label about an album project that we're going to put out for next year, and it's like, okay, I mean, even the reason that I started doing what I'm doing online, it was like, well, I have all this stuff to say and I'm observing all these things that are happening in the culture and I want to comment. But oh my God, I'm going to have to wait a year to be able to put out a statement, a musical statement on this. And it's just such a curated process that involves so many people and it's so costly and, even getting on the road. And that's a whole logistical thing. So I guess doing the online thing versus doing music, it satisfies, it turns a lot of knobs in my head. I'll say it that way. It satisfies a lot of, scratches a lot of itches for me, that in that I can do, I'm a bit of a nerd. I can do research on a variety of topics. I'm an independent thinker and worker. So as long as I ensure that what I'm doing is well researched, then I don't have to run it through a committee. I just put up a video yesterday on my degree is in international business and German studies. So it is of particular interest to me when people make claims like, well, Project 2025, which is this, Heritage Foundation Republican plan for Trump's next term. Oh, that's just like Mein Kampf. That's like Hitler's Mein Kampf. And it's like, well, how does that hit my ears? How does that hit my brain? What do I do with that claim? And so yesterday, the breakdown, as you mentioned, I do these little mini documentaries. The breakdown that I put out yesterday was, okay, let's evaluate that. Let's look at this. What was Hitler doing in 1925 versus what we're doing in 2025? Are there parallels? Are there similarities? And I, it was really just a matter of doing a check-in with myself. I didn't have anybody else to run that through. So that's the really cool thing about what I do now. And also I feel like my reach is just a lot. It's greater, even though it's not generally in person. But I'm also organizing events with creators now. I yesterday, I'm sorry, 2 days ago, I did a very small creators gathering. My ultimate goal is that I want to do live podcasts where I gather creators in particular cities across the country, and we actually get an audience there, and have a interesting, fun time and a discussion about interesting, serious, or silly things. I want you to be involved in one of those, Corey, if possible. But I did one of those here in Philly a couple days ago, and then so that's the other thing, is that like now I'm bringing in this kind of real world element, this tactile element. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it all live together, and also figure out what I'm doing with my life at the same time.
Yeah, same here. Same here. It's working on social media. It's so interesting because you get this reach so quickly, and
Hmm.
then it's like, well, now what do I do with it? Like I
Right,
have all these millions of people watching my content, enjoying
right,
my content. How do I connect with them further? How do I monetize this for myself? How
right.
do I create some longevity here, turn this into something bigger than just a few videos online?
Yeah,
It's really difficult. It's something that I'm struggling with now,
yeah,
just trying to figure out how to put it all together.
yeah.
But you mentioned the fact that when you're doing social media videos, I mean, it's just all you. You do the research,
Mhm.
you throw it together. You don't have
Yep.
to run it by anybody. There's no gatekeepers. But obviously, that's very different from, say, the music industry. I'm very interested about your story within the music industry because, like, you make actual music, and I don't want to, like, disrespect people who are making like pop or something like that. But your style of music is a very um like, it takes a lot of actual skill and talent to do what you do in the music industry. But despite that, you see a lot of people these days that just kind of get famous overnight because they kind of become a viral sensation, and they do something, some kind of song that's kind of catchy. Uh, what are you've been in that industry for a while. Is there a sense of frustration when you are doing your music, and then you see some of this stuff that kind of just, like I said, fly by night kind of viral sensation, yet it gets so skyrocketing popular that yet you're actually making music, and it doesn't seem to have the same connection with the industry. Is there a sense of frustration there, or is that just sort of, does this come with the territory when you're making a kind of a more niche genre like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something I've done what I'm doing now since, 2007, 2008. It's been a long time that I've been at it. And so, I knew coming into it, like jazz is the way that I'm classified, even though I feel like my music is much more expansive than that. But that's the genre that I end up being placed into, which is fine. But yeah, I've known from the beginning this is not a genre that has a whole lot of reach. But the positive thing about it is that there is an infrastructure, and that's one of the reasons that I'm fine with being categorized as a jazz artist or singer. That there is an infrastructure within jazz that allows people like me, who are not, Taylor Swift, or we're not 25, frankly, 25-year-old skinny white chicks. We're not that, but there is an infrastructure that allows me to put what I have out there, and people who are interested in hearing that type of music and hearing that artistry, if they like it, they're going to hear me. There are jazz radio stations. You can't just walk up to a jazz radio station and hand them your album, in the way that one of my favorite movies is Coal Miner's Daughter, with Sissy Spacek and Tommy Lee Jones. And I'm always inspired to watch the way that they portray Loretta Lynn's career, the ascendancy of her career, and just how bare bones it was, and just how the guerrilla method that they use, where they just drove around all these radio stations and handed them her, and they had to hustle, and her husband, had to hustle and do what he did. But it's not quite at that level. But I guess to the degree that that is possible in this day and age, you can hire a radio promoter and you can call jazz clubs, and you can, if you have something, if you have talent, if you have grit, if you have stick to itiveness, and with some people, if you got money, you can make a career happen. You can develop a career. It is possible. Versus, if I were a 25-year-old skinny white chick, I just trying to break into the music industry, that it is very much a corporate exercise. It's not just something that any and everyone can be a part of. It's a lot tougher. So that's the juxtaposition there. It's like, yeah, there's a good friend of mine, Charlie Hunter, says, you got a lot of folks just scrambling over a very, very thin slice of pie when it comes to jazz. It is a very thin slice of the music industry, but it's there, and it's accessible, and it's available. If you don't fit all of these traditional parameters about all of the things that make people successful in the music industry. So I just take it for what it's worth. And I understand that, as Charlie Hunter again says, if you can fill up a room with 200 to 300 people in a city, he says, even, maybe 125 people, if you can fill up a room with 100 to 200 people in every city that you go to, you have a career, you have a middle class life, if that's the life you want. Is that the life I want right now? I'm not sure. Now having this online element to what I do, I'm envisioning something that, a little bit of a hybrid experience for myself. I'm not really so much the road dog who just has to stay performing in front of the people and traveling constantly. That's not necessarily my idea of a good time, but being able to have a choice number of gigs every year, like I'm good with that.
Yeah, and like you said, because you're working in the jazz space, there's always going to be an audience for that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were, like you said, some super young, pop artist, that music may fade after 5 or 10 years. That person might not be able to find people who generally want to listen to that all the time. They'll
Right.
probably go through a period, like a down period, and then maybe some nostalgia will happen 20, 30 years down the road
Mm-hmm.
that makes them a little popular again. But a lot of times that doesn't happen for pop artists. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're working in a more specific genre like jazz, and I know your parents were gospel musicians,
Mm-hmm.
when you're working in more specific genres like that, you're going to have a niche audience that's always going to be there. And like you said, if
Mm-hmm.
you can fill up a room with a few hundred people, that's a career right there. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to be number one on the charts or winning
Right.
Grammys to be able to actually be a living, musician, have a living career as a musician.
Right.
And that's very interesting. But it sounds like you're kind of getting more kind of floating more into this social media content creation space, and that sounds like it may be the thing that you want to focus on maybe a little bit more than music, or do you just want to like maybe figure out a way for them to live side by side?
Yeah, I think that's the ideal, if they can live together, which up to this point it seems like that's a doable thing if it's something that I'm willing to work towards. I mean, I had my doubts at the beginning of this process, when in 2020, that's when this is when a lot of us started doing what we're doing. And my thought at that time was, of course, we all know all of the crazy stuff that was happening in 2020, and the George Floyd stuff happened, and Breonna Taylor, and the pandemic was happening. Then all the election stuff started setting in, and it just was really getting crazy. And I'm thinking, I am just a bubbling cauldron. There's so much I want to say right now, but will my audience accept that? Will my music audience accept that? I mean, jazz, that world is filled with a lot of, it is a moneyed world, to some degree, depending on the type of jazz you do. There's all types of different jazz, so-called jazz, that you can be involved in. But the kind that actually pays, those folks, they may not line up with a lot of the views that I express online. And there are a lot of people that I know, understandably, who just don't speak out. I know what their views are privately, but they would never go on their social media and start talking about their personal political views, because they don't want to turn off half of their audience. And so that was my feeling at the beginning of this process. I mean, I didn't have a huge audience, but I had the audience that I had. It was, maybe several thousand people or whatever that were on my uh, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, whatever. And it was like, man, are these people going to start to unfollow me and stop coming to shows and stop streaming my music or buying my music because now they don't agree with my politics. And so I had to believe that there was this audience that was out there. It's what I said at the beginning of the process. That I really felt like there was an audience that was waiting to hear from me. There was an audience that was waiting to connect with me. And I just had not found the way to do that, to connect with them. But I knew that they were there. I really had that belief in my heart that that audience was out there. So I had to kind of, sounds corny, but I kind of had to follow my heart in that respect and just put it out there and not really worry too much about what I thought the consequences might be of being more outspoken, because there was a risk with already having a career, having people that followed me. So it seems kind of silly at this point a little bit, but at that time, it really did feel very risky. So now I am just in the process of figuring out how it all lives together and realizing thankfully that it does not have to be an either or proposition, that I really can have, on the in quotes, have it all. I can have both of those worlds, and they can, then the question is whether this world helps to feed the music stuff. I wish that there were more of a windfall, I guess, in terms of the people who are buying my app. Definitely has helped. It helps to have, 1 million followers, as you know. Congratulations on crossing that milestone, by the way. But it helps to have, 1 million followers on TikTok, 100,000 on Facebook, 100,000 on Instagram. That's helpful because when you put that message out there, like, hey, I'm going to be, and I am going to be playing Philly on the 21st of July. Like, hey, there's more people to get that message out to, whether or not they know about your music or care about your music. There are ears, there are bodies, there are people to interact with that messaging. And so another of my mantras is there is no downside to audience building. And I remind myself of that all the time. There's no downside to audience building. So whatever it is that you may want to parlay, redirect your audience to, I would never advise switching up what you're doing altogether, because I've seen that have detrimental effects on people's followings. Just like, yeah, I started out doing advice on growing your social media following, and now I want to switch over to doing videos about van life or something. You just completely drop your audience and start some entirely new thing. A lot of those people are probably not going to come with you. But incorporating messaging around the music, sometimes I'll put a little bumper at the end of a breakdown and say, hey, I'm going to be playing this club, or hey, go over and join this or attend that or buy a ticket to that or whatever. So if you can sneak the messaging in here and there, it can actually be really, really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I struggle with, because to reflect a little bit on what you were talking about, having this audience in jazz and then wanting to do these more politically charged videos and wondering, are they going to accept it? Am I going to lose followers? One of my things is I was actually working in the political organizing space before I started my TikTok channel,
Mm.
and obviously a lot of my TikToks are comedy, satire, it can get quite edgy. And when I started doing some of that, I was like, I wonder, like, is this gonna like make it difficult for me to, if I ever want to go back to doing
Mm.
organizing, or some of the people that I worked with going to see these and say, oh man, this is kind of crazy. I don't know if we can work with this guy anymore. And
Yeah.
so you do feel like when you put yourself out there on social media, like you're taking a major risk, because if it does blow up and you get really popular, there's still that possibility of possible backlash when it comes to like
Mm.
future employment, or like you said, if you have an audience that already likes you for something else, are they going to desert you because now they know you believe in something slightly different,
Right.
possibly? And so that's definitely a lot of a risk involved with that. But it sounds like it's paying off for you, because it sounds like you've been able to build this audience, and I think your music in a way kind of pairs well with what you're doing, because a lot of times, for instance, your breakdowns, when you did the breakdown on the Sesame Street or
Hmm.
things like that, I feel like someone who would like to hear the history of Sesame Street would probably be somewhat interested in hearing jazz music. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that seems pretty similar, and
Yeah.
I think that your music kind of pairs well with the content that you've created over the last couple of years now. So I feel like you've created a great way for it to intersect. But I can definitely understand that trepidation about doing it in the first place, just because you're not sure if
Hmm.
people are going to respond well to it. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about this what I what I kind of wanted to be the focus of this conversation uh, is this disruption that we see happening in the industry right now, because a lot of your breakdowns are about the entertainment industry, and I noticed a lot of them are about the entertainment industry many years ago, mid 20th
Mhm.
century, that sort of thing. And I think that a lot of because I think I was reading an article in the LA Times earlier today where it was saying that the amount of movies and TV shows, even just being made this year, is so far down compared to early last year.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we had the major strikes with actors and writers last year. A lot of disruption happened in the industry just because of that. But you would think that with those strikes being over with for several months now, really since the end of last year, that the industry would have rebounded and would be making a lot more. Instead, that's not happening. There seems to be a
Mhm.
major contraction happening in the industry. What are some of the reasons, in your opinion, as to why that may be happening? I know that streaming services, a lot of money was spent on those, and then the desire after the pandemic wasn't as strong to buy
Mhm.
into all of them. But what are some of the other reasons why you think that it just doesn't seem like movies and TV shows are as popular and as profitable as they were, say, 20, 30 years ago?
I think, oh, there's got to be a ton of factors. I mean, you mentioned the pandemic. I think that was a represented as so-called inflection point, or sea change point for a lot of things and for a lot of industries. I think we started to question, even for like church. I also do videos on the world of deconstruction, and churches are seeing a huge shift in the level of interest and investment that people have in regular attendance, regular church attendance. I think a lot of us started to question some really fundamental things about our lives during the pandemic, and we're still seeing the impact of that. We're seeing the impact of AI across the board in the entertainment industry, which I know a lot of that was a whole lot of what those contract disputes were about and why the sit outs or the walkouts happened in the first place. But I don't think it necessarily changed the fundamental shift that is happening, and how much of that industry can actually be outsourced and will be outsourced. I think also just social media in general, I think, is becoming so much more of a focus for so many people. I watched a video by a guy named Rick Beato, and if you don't follow him, or if your listeners don't follow him, he's just a really good all-around resource for commentary on the music industry, and he's a YouTuber. His name is Rick Beato. But I watched one of his videos, just talking about the searches, like what are people searching for online, and he talks about kind of the degrading of music in general. And he talked about how searches on Google for music, for films, even for gaming, all of that has taken a precipitous drop in recent years, in the last, really since social media came along. That really has a lot to do with our viewing habits, our listening habits, just what we're interested in general, which is another reason that for both you and me, what we do is so relevant right now, because so many people are getting their entertainment from social media now. Even when I go to sit down and I put on a Judy Garland, I'm a huge Judy Garland fan. I put on a Judy Garland movie yesterday, A Star is Born. And it's like I'm finding myself picking up my phone while I'm watching it, and I'm playing games, New York Times crossword puzzle, or um, just looking at socials and checking this and that. And I'm having a hard time focusing on something that I really love. I truly do love. I can't tell you the last time I sat down and listened to an entire album. And a lot of it's because of what I do. I'm heavy into editing, constantly, and I don't have a commute. I don't drive back and forth to work, but I know how my life has changed. I know how my viewing habits and listening habits have changed. I know I have to be very intentional with deciding to just sit down and focus on even an entire television show, but let alone a movie. And I love movies and television, and I love these things. This is why I do what I do. All these breakdowns you're talking about. It's because I was a kid just being babysat by the television, in the 90s or whatever. So, I just think the habits of human beings have shifted, and we're seeing, because of industries like AI and because of social media, we are just seeing people's habits shifting. And also, we're living in an era where I think we've kind of maxed out in terms of the quality of content that can be presented. I mean, you think about what technology looked like in the film industry 20 or 30 years ago. I remember when I was a kid, like Jurassic Park. Okay, that was like, you talk about an inflection point in terms of the CGI that was possible. And then, Toy Story and that kind of thing, when all of that stuff came along, Pixar, and when the technology just hit that point in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was like, whoa, we're in a different era. That was the era that I kind of came of age in. It's like, wow, this is just amazing. What's possible, what we're capable of. Then you saw the influx of all of these Marvel films and Disney films. They're just, with the market was flooded with all of this stuff. And I think at this point we're just getting to a point where people are less impressed with it. It's just the technology in and of itself has kind of hit, it's kind of maxed out. And now it's getting to the point, at least for me, because I dropped off with the Marvel stuff way long time ago. Like the first few that hit, it was like Iron Man, oh, cool. The Hulk, oh man, it's crazy what they can do. And, maybe the Avengers. And then after that, for me, maybe Thor. After that, for me, it was like, okay, I've had my fill of all of this superhero comic book stuff. That's just not, where's Miramax? Where did they go? Now we have the A24 studio that's actually making some thoughtful, sort of, grown up kind of mid budget films. And that's great. But like that stuff in the era that I came of age in, I talk about Miramax, when we know, what happened to Harvey Weinstein and all of that. But the golden age of Miramax, it was like Shakespeare in Love and just like so many thoughtful, interesting films that were about the human experience, and it really did not rely on technology. And so I think we just, we're seeing the culmination of so much, just an over reliance on technology, and that technology kind of being maxed out to the point where it's like, well, who are we even appealing to? If every film that's put out is supposed to appeal to 13-year-olds, well, 13-year-olds grow up and they move on to something else. And so if you're not making films that appeal to adults, you're gonna see that fall off. It's just you're chasing trends, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. So the film industry, will it ever get back to its glory days? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think all of that is correct. I think the technology changes have a lot to do with this. I was watching a TikTok not too long ago where it was talking about how one of the main reasons why we don't go to the movies anymore is because when you compare the the home movie viewing experience to what it was like in the 90s, like if you go back to the 90s, first of all, a big TV was very expensive. Like you're
Hmm.
talking over 2,000, sometimes 1,000, two thousand
Right.
dollars for one of those really giant, for those first HD TVs that came out. I'm sure you
Right.
remember. Like I remember in my neighborhood, if you had one of those TVs, you were it. Like we were going to your house because most people didn't have those types of TVs,
Yeah.
and so the TVs weren't as great. And so like watching a Jurassic Park or The
Hmm.
Matrix or something like that on one of those
Yeah.
big back TVs that were kind of
Yeah.
smaller, it wasn't as great of an experience as going
Hmm.
to the movie theaters. Whereas now you can get a really good, like giant HD screen TV for like a couple $100,
Yeah.
and you can stream all of this stuff directly to your home, and it's just a much more convenient
Hmm.
option than getting up, getting dressed, going to the movie theater, paying a lot of money for the tickets
Yeah.
as well as even more for the food, and
Hmm.
and then being around other people, and you don't even know if the movie's going to be good,
Right.
and you may have spent all that money and all that time on something that may not necessarily be worth it. Now I still go to the movies sometimes, a couple times a year, just because I'm like you, really into movies.
Hmm.
But most movies that come out, I would just rather wait for it to come out on streaming. And I
Hmm.
do feel like that's one of the big disruptions, is that they spend all this money on movies and they just simply can't make that money back
Hmm.
just through streaming. It's just not possible. They have to, and when they do these theatrical runs, people aren't as interested in going to the movie theaters anymore. I think the pandemic really was kind of one of the final nails in the coffin
Yeah.
of the movie theater. Um, but another thing you talk about is attention span. And that it's interesting to hear you talk about it because a lot of people think that when it comes to that, it's just the young people like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds
Mhm.
that don't have attention spans because of social media and they can't sit through a whole movie. But even you were just saying, as someone who grew up on the great movies of the 20th century, I find myself doing the same thing. Like I'll be watching something like Singing in the Rain, which is one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies of all time.
Yeah.
Every time like TCM plays it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this from the time I, clip it on there to the end of it. But like, 30 minutes in, I'll find myself like just
Yeah.
pulling out my phone or maybe Googling something about like an
Right.
actor that I see and like, wait a minute, I'm interested in this I just
Mhm.
saw. And it's like, and then I find myself looking at the phone and I'm like, wait a minute, I just missed one of my favorite parts of the
Yeah.
movie because I was paying attention to my phone. So do you think that like we're content creators. Do you feel like me and you are causing some of this disruption to
Oh,
the industry?
no.
Are we a part of
Are
because
we the problem?
are we the
Am I the
problem
drama?
here? Because one of the parallels is like we talk about television and its effect on the movies back in like the 50s and 60s when people could just stay at home and watch the TV. Why go out to a movie theater? So when people could just go on their phones and watch these little short 4 or 5 minute videos and watch several of them within a few hours, why
Mhm.
sit and watch a 2 hour long movie or an hour long TV show that's just going
Mhm.
to be one thing where I can just go and scroll and see 100 things in that same
Yeah.
amount of time? Do you feel like we're creating a lot of that disruption?
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to argue that we are not, Corey. Thank you for um, that stark realization that I'm a part of the problem. Yeah, and it's like it just it goes so deep because then you think like the number of people that I see online who are, I mean, so talented. They are incredible actors. They are comedians. They're writing scripts and they're acting them out and they're staging them in their bedroom or their living room, or they're doing what you do and just doing expositories on history and making that really edgy and fun and interesting. And they're doing the crap that the television should have been doing better, because
Yes.
there's so many barriers to entry when it comes to being a part of the entertainment business. I mean, all I ever wanted to do growing up was write scripts. I wanted to act. I wanted to be involved in the entertainment business, and that was prohibitive for me for a whole lot of reasons. My life just didn't go in that direction. And here I am online expressing something that I probably should have taken the time to go and, build a career around. But I didn't do that. That's not the way my life went. But now here I am talking about and doing commentary on, and I do little sketches and things as well. And so we, people like us, are expressing something, from the comfort of our own homes that other people had to get up and go to film school. They had to move to LA and scrap and go audition and work really hard and be rejected and be told that what they had was not going to appeal to the masses or whatever. And it's just like this is an expression of kind of the of a it's like a proletariat uprising or something in terms of entertainment and content. It's like we are a part of that. We are a part of in pushing back, I guess, against an industry that says that what we have isn't what people want, and
Yeah.
we are a part of a group of people who are helping to prove them wrong. I mean, there are all kinds of people that I run into through my TikTok, my TikTok feed or whatever, and I'm just like, wow, no, there's no film company or whatever that would have ever, no director, no casting director that would have ever been looking for this particular person. And then yet here they are, and they have 2 million followers or something. And because they're doing what they're doing in authenticity, and it's raw and it's real, and like what you do, it's edgy, it's different, it's thoughtful or whatever. And it's like, let people, and I deal with the same challenge in the world of music, allow people to connect with these creators one on one, like remove the gatekeepers, remove the barriers to entry, and all of a sudden you will see what it is people actually want. That is what this is an expression of. It is an expression of the creators being able to directly connect with the consumers. And the consumers are getting to vote for what it is that they actually care about and will pay attention to. So yeah, we're a part of that, Corey. We're part of that creator economy, and helping to maybe move a lot of the attention and the focus and the money away from media, traditional media that we both grew up on and still appreciate to a large degree. But it's like it's a lot of stuff competing, with each other, and it's going to be interesting to see if it can all kind of live together
Yeah.
going forward. I'm not really sure. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure.
And that is the biggest thing. Well, first of all, I think you made the right decision by not going down that traditional media road, because as someone who went to film school and is still paying a lot of
Mm.
student loans from it, uh, nothing I really did in film school put me where I'm at now. I mean, I learned things, but really, like you said, it was expressing myself via social media and finding and connecting with that audience that really put me in the proximity to all of these studios and things that I am near now. It all came from TikTok and social media.
Yeah.
I went to film school over a decade ago, and I
Hmm.
can't tell you how I would have gotten to this point if it wasn't for social media.
Yeah.
So definitely, it just seems like a lot of people like us who wanted to work in that industry are finding through social media this is finally the way. But kind of like you said, ironically, we're disrupting and taking away from the
Hmm.
very industry that we
Yeah.
wanted to work
That's
in. But
crazy.
but you speak so much about the barriers of entry, barriers to entry. I don't think either of us would have been able to get the audience that we have if we had to go through the traditional
Yeah.
Hollywood
Yeah.
system or
System.
whatever it is. It would
Hmm.
have been almost impossible. Yet, look at you. You have 1 million followers. I have 1 million followers. There's clearly an
Hmm.
audience out there that wants to hear what we have to say, that wants to see us and see us consistently, not just
Yeah.
see us one or two times, but
Yeah.
consistently be fans and followers of our work. So we're proving to this sort of antiquated industry at this point, like, hey, there are other voices out there that people want to hear from on a consistent basis. And
Hmm.
you've been largely ignoring these voices
Hmm.
for decades.
Yeah.
And now it's time for us to, take back the power, so to speak,
Right.
and use it to really express ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, and then you talk about whether or not it can live together, whether or not us social media people can live. Lately, I've been getting, for a while I was getting a lot of offers to use my platform to promote the work that is going on in the Hollywood industry, and now some of that has slowed down, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of it is because of what you just said. They kind of see what we're doing as a threat to them rather than as a component that they can use. And I tell my one of the things that I wanted to do as a kid was I had a very very long shot dream of being like a late night TV show host. Like I wanted to be like an Arsenio Hall or like a Letterman. Like I was like, oh, that would be one of the funnest things in the world to do. And now I could tell like my family, like my brother and me have these conversations. Like, yeah, I still want to do that one day. And he's like, why? Nobody watches those shows anymore. More
Wow.
people are watching you and what you're
You
doing on
exactly.
TikTok than are watching a Jimmy Fallon or something like that at this point.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like you said, it's kind of like sad to me because it's like on the one hand, it's like, well, I'm glad that people are watching me and I'm glad that I'm getting that type of fame. But at the same time, it's like, but I miss the whole concept of like, doing traditional TV and that dream of wanting to be in that. Do you
Yeah.
sometimes feel like the way things have changed, even though it's kind of changed for the better for us, that there's this missing element of almost this untouchable element to it. Like, you used to look at those TV shows and those movies and it was just so otherworldly. And now the social media thing has kind of like broken down the veil to the point where it's now like just, anybody can get popular on these platforms.
Mm.
Do you feel like that's kind of changed the way we admire it? Do you feel like that's changed a little bit because of just the way it's presented to us?
I think I understand what you're asking, and I definitely have seen a movement on TikTok in particular with like younger people, probably your age and younger, millennials and younger, that are like, becoming a bit disillusioned with the whole concept of celebrity. That I have noticed
Yeah.
that there is a movement, a slight movement within a particular group of people away from just this sort of unabashed worship of celebrity. and celebrity culture, which I think is mostly a positive thing.
Yeah.
But I can't say that on one hand, I don't um, kind of look back nostalgically at the days, that we were growing up. I grew up partly in the 80s and partly in the 90s. And, I grew up like with Oprah, for
Yeah.
goodness sake. And she was like the queen of television and she was on every day. And I learned so much from her. And she was almost like a second mom to me because I was, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And
Mhm.
Oprah was out here just conquering the television world, conquering business industry, whatever. And, now to see the way that kind of the younger generation interprets Oprah and looks at Oprah, and it's just like what Oprah is and what she represents has changed a lot in the last 10 years or so, just through that social media lens. And I can't say that it's all incorrect. I can't say that they're necessarily incorrect in a lot of things that they perceive about her, but there was like a genuine idolizing that I and a lot of other people had of folks like Oprah. I'm just using her as an example. But yeah, I do kind of miss the days when we were able to have heroes. We were just able to have folks that we idolized, we looked up to, we venerated, and they represented a particular thing for us, and it was packaged in a certain way, and it just came into our living rooms every day, and it was predictable. And even movie stars, Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts, and a lot of my heroes are go way back, to the 40s, 50s, 60s, and
Yeah.
that era with music and with film, television as well. But yeah, I mean, you look back on that day, and if I watch documentaries or watch even YouTube videos that people do about the stars of that day, and then one of the things that I do is to elevate. I just did an entire 17-minute YouTube breakdown on Barbara Streisand
Yeah.
and Neil Diamond's song "You Don't Bring Me Flowers Anymore," and it's like, yeah, that was a golden era, mid-century, whatever, 1930s all the way through probably the 90s. It was
Yeah.
a golden era in media, and we were able to have these sort of shiny stars in the constellation, and it meant something, and it was a really cool thing. And that really doesn't exist like that
No.
anymore, and it does make me sort of nostalgic and a bit sad, I have to say.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it is somewhat a good thing to break down a lot of that hero worship because we learn after the fact about someone like I grew up. Bill Cosby was one of my
Yeah,
heroes, and now it's
yeah,
like, well, that's gone. And
yeah.
so and so yeah, and so like in a way, that hero worship, having that removed, is kind of a good thing because you just never know what these people are like behind
Yeah.
closed doors. Anyway, but another way, like you said, there is a nostalgia to it that I personally miss, and there is that concept of being like a well liked, just universally loved and appreciated like
Mhm.
star, whether that be
Mhm.
in music, movies, whatever it be. Like you said, a TV with someone like Oprah, that really doesn't exist anymore. And I
Yeah.
think that a
Yeah.
lot of that is because we know so much more about these people, maybe because of
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
But I also think a lot of that has to do with the way people who could even be in that position behave on social media. Like, for instance, you go back to the 80s, you didn't know, unless they really put themselves out there, you didn't know the political views of a
Mhm.
random actor or a random person
Right.
in that time period. Whereas now, an actor, I mean, there's so many stories of actors just going on some weird, racist rant or some weird
Right.
political rant media, and it's just like, well, that person just lost their career, and like they wouldn't have even had the ability to do that 40,
Mhm.
50 years ago because there was no outlet for them to just
Right.
say all
Everything
those
had to go
things.
through publicists, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think a lot of the social media people could probably use a good publicist
Yeah.
these days, honestly. Um, but yeah, where do you think this is all going? I think that's one of the big things that I try to ask myself, like, when I look at my own position in all of this. And then, obviously with TikTok, there's literal legislation that's threatening its very existence within the next year.
Mhm.
So where do you think that all of this is headed? Do you feel like that the social media content creators just will naturally become those next stars, or is that not even possible just because of the way everything is presented to us and just the way everything is set up these days? Like, how do you see, even just looking at it from a personal standpoint, how do you see yourself in this space 5, 10 years from now?
That's a big question, and it's a good one, and I cannot say that I have an answer to that, Corey. What happens to all of the social media stars and the folks who've kind of been spoilers to traditional media? What happens to traditional media? I don't I don't really know. I can't say that I know. I'm wondering what my whole trajectory is going to look like next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it's cool when opportunities like you're saying the NAACP thing. It's cool when those types of opportunities come along, but it's totally unpredictable. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
even probably more unpredictable than it is to have a traditional film career or commentator career. So that's the short answer, is that I don't know where this all goes. I can't say that in the back of my mind that I'm not eyeing like, oh yeah, it would be great if, you know, PBS or NPR or CBS Sunday Morning or some, outlet like that were to find my content, get a hold of it, and ask me to be a contributor. That's probably my ideal thing, is to be involved with something like that and to be able to do what I'm doing at a level where I have a predictable output, predictable income, all of that. Yeah, I think for a lot of us in the back of our minds, we still see that as like the golden ring. That's still the thing that we're reaching for. Like you said, still talk show host. That's still the ideal. And it's that way for a whole lot of reasons. I don't think that it's that we shouldn't necessarily be looking to the world of traditional media or some sort of hybrid between traditional media and what we're doing. Yeah, I if I'm honest, that kind of is the goal. But the alternative to that, since that's not really something that I can control, the alternative is that I continue to drive people to my Patreon. I'm trying to be more consistent about that.
Yeah.
The platform where people can support you consistently and say, hey, we like what you do, we like your output, and we don't want you to have to worry about how you're making a living doing what you're doing. So, I have a podcast that I do consistently. I have a radio show that I do consistently. And I'm looking forward to, even after we get past all of this, because I'm doing a lot of work with C4 organizations and nonprofits, political action committees this year, just trying to get out messaging around the election. So I'm looking forward to, once we get past this, if we continue to have a country and a democracy, being able to get back to really focusing on my breakdowns and just doing more of that kind of creative work that I love so much, and cultural commentary. So I don't know where this all goes, Corey. I have no idea. I don't know, but I know that for me, what feels like the goal is maybe a hybrid of
Yeah.
old and new media, being able to still have the creative independence that I do now, being able to reach my audience, connect with my audience directly in the way that I do, but then also having the backing of some, probably studio behemoth or whatever, some multinational conglomerate that says, hey, here's a paycheck and here's your avenue to reach, however many people CBS Sunday Morning or whatever reaches every week. So yeah, that would be the ideal for me.
Yeah, and it's so weird because I'm the same way. I would love for some bigger entity to reach out and have consistency, have like a job, but at the same time, so many of those entities are trying to do what we do. They're
Right.
trying to figure out how to consistently go viral, how to build on social media.
Right.
Like you'll follow some of these, like you said, CBS Morning. I'm not sure about them specifically, but you'll follow some of these very traditional, morning shows and news shows that have
Mm-hmm.
been around for decades and have like from our generation, we would love to even just be a part of that legacy. But then you go on their social media and it's like, oh, 30,000 followers, 40,000. What? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is it that this thing that is so famous doesn't have more followers? Then you look up some random, TikToker or YouTuber and they're millions. And it's like
Right.
how and so a lot of those entities are trying to figure out like how we do what we do. And so I
Right.
think that, like you said, the hybrid model, like us getting them the social media internet reach that they have, or that they
Yeah.
want, and them using us to do what they do, and that's make popular content. I think that there's going to have to be some sort of compromise there,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, people are getting the majority of their content from social media and the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to reverse anytime soon. And so,
Right.
bigger companies, they're going to have to figure out ways to they got to deal with us, Dara. They got to
Mm-hmm.
they got to figure out ways to deal with us and use the talents that we have to do what they've been doing for all these years, entertaining and
Yeah.
informing people. Um, but this has been a great conversation. Dara, tell everybody how they can find you online and where they can go to follow you and see more of your content.
Well, I'm at Dara Starr Tucker on most sites. That's Dara with one R and Star with two. Dara Starr Tucker. But on Instagram, I'm Dara Tucker B. For whatever reason. I'm that. So yeah, I'm on all the platforms. I recently got booted off of Twitter slash X.
Really?
I'm not sure if it's because I did a video on Elon Musk being a white supremacist, but I
Oh,
did.
wow.
So yeah, a spammer took over my account, and when I tried to create a new account just to try to secure my name because they changed my name, I was like, well, maybe I can get my name back. They rejected my attempts to start another account. So yeah, it's not even to X is not a place that I've wanted to be for a long time, but I just wanted to make sure that no one could grab my name. So I'm not even on X anymore. I'm on Threads. I'm on Facebook. People ignore Facebook, but Facebook is still folks is active over there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, and it's all Dara Star Tucker and Dara Tucker B on Instagram.
Well, Dara, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate this conversation, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, wonderful, Corey. I'm hoping to have you on my show really soon and hopefully one of those in-person events that we'll be able to do when I come down your way. But thank you so much for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.